All right. Next on our agenda is Brad Lamberg. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of resolution number 19-7 to authorize the issuance of Fidelity insurance coverage to Berry County Road Commissioners.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Gibson, support by Smelker. The floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to take a couple minutes of your time. I'll try to be brief. Public Act 283 of 1909 provides that the County Board of Supervisors, which I believe 66 or so ended, but still used now as the commissioners acting as that body, to be required to set up the amount of expense of securing a bond for road commissioners. If any, it does say. So I'll read you that line. Each and every county road commissioner shall be required to execute and give official bond in such amount as the Board of Supervisors of such county may determine the expense of securing such bond, if any, to be paid with the county road fund. So this is not a bill for the county, it's a bill for the road commission. We've always taken care of this. What we've come to find out recently, this was at one of our conferences, was brought up. Most, I understand, or the majority are not doing this, and it does technically say if any, so I suppose you guys could assume that it's zero. However, we've talked with Michael and Luella. There is no record that anyone can produce of what's required, but the Road Commission does have a history of somewhat consistently purchasing a $2,000 bond. Their current cost is $100 per year. It's such a minuscule amount, we just assume self-insure it for that, and it's for theft and stuff like that. If a road commissioner were ever to steal something from the road commission, is all it really covers anyway. We actually have had forever what's called Fidelity insurance. It's not a surety bond like we're talking about in the law, of $25,000 per person that we pay through our self-insurance. County road commissions across the state are self-insured for liability purposes. We pay $125 per year for all of our employees, road commissioners included. So our contention is that this is covered, and you don't need to set a limit or issue anything at all, unless you so desire. But we believe we have it covered, unless you would like to see additional higher levels of insurance, which we probably would still request that we get a quote through our insurance pool, rather than, you can see we're paying $100 per commissioner for $2,000 in coverage per year, compared to $125 per year for all employees. So we're talking kind of foolish to pay those kind of monies for that kind of insurance when we have actually better coverage through our insurance company already should that issue ever take place. So we think if you could find some stuff from post-1909, at one time this body probably set it at $2,000, when $2,000 was a lot of money, or that potentially could be stolen. Probably you would set it higher today if you looked at it. So it was time to address, or just officially get it off the record and kind of say we're not going to require that, and we'll accept the Fidelity insurance instead of through the road commission, which we're going to continue to provide.
You were already doing that.
Oh, yes, and have for, I didn't look back how long. I'm going to say as long as
That you can remember.
Yeah.
And you've been,
Well, I didn't look back.
oh, okay. No, but I mean, you've been with the road commission.
Yeah, but I didn't remember whether we have this all 23
okay.
years. Yes, sir, but I do believe that. I believe that as long as our pool has provided this Fidelity insurance, we have purchased it. We're one of the original founders of it, so it's been there since the origination. Nothing's changed recent history. It's not new insurance coverage, I can tell you that.
I have no questions on this no-brainer request.
No, me neither.
Thank you, Dave or Dan. All righty. Seeing no discussion, the motion made by Gibson, supported by Spelker, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of Resolution 19-7 to authorize the issuance of Fidelity insurance coverage to the Berry County Road Commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is approved. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. You're welcome. One last thing, if I may take 10 more seconds. We had our audit this morning issued to the board. Just came from a board meeting, got a clean audit, and so I'm happy to report that to you again this year. We've always had a clean one, and we intend to keep it that way. So,
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Next on the agenda is Jim Yarger. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of Resolution 19-9, resolution of authorization for the 2018 Homeland Security Grant Program intergovernmental funding agreement between the County of Van Buren, the County of Berry, and to authorize the chairperson and administrator to sign it. There's a typo there, so.
Support.
Moved by Smelker, support by Jackson. Mr. Yarger.
Yeah, this is just, I'm back here again for the next grant cycle. The state requires that each region have one fiduciary. The regional board's elected that Van Buren is, or I should reverse that. Van Buren so graciously said they'll be our fiduciary, and the board approved that. So we will continue with them again this year. And this is just the intergovernmental funding agreement that needs to be signed between us and them, and with a resolution.
Any questions?
Oh,
Righty.
it was, right?
Yeah, yep. This is the grant that whatever we spend that's approved, we get reimbursed 100%. So.
All righty. There being no further discussion, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of Resolution 19-9, resolution of authorization for the 2018 Homeland Security Grant Program intergovernmental funding agreement between the County of Van Buren and the County of Berry, and authorize the chairperson and administrator to sign it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is approved. And since you're in the hot seat, you get 2 items.
I do.
So,
Not here very often, so I want to take advantage of it.
so at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to apply for FEMA Hazard Mitigation Program funds for the purpose of updating the Berry County Hazard Mitigation Plan that expired in 2012, and to issue an RFP for this project.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Parker, support by Smelker. The floor is yours.
Yeah, here it says that our plan expired in 2012. It is quite an in-depth process to get that done. I'd been, since 2012, trying to find or go after funding to take care of it or to help us pay for getting that updated, and stumbled across that this funding was available at this time. And so in talking to other jurisdictions who were applying for the same grant funding, the feeling was it's going to be about $35,000 to take care of this through hiring a consulting firm to help us with that, through that process. It is a 75-25% grant or match, so we have to match 25%, which if it is that $35,000, it'd be $87.50 would be our share. But that can be in part or whole in kind or third-party donations to the process. I know we did this back just before I was hired, or it was in the process of that, and I believe that half or better of the in-match funds at that time were taken care of by things that our GIS department did and people we had attend the meetings and some footwork we did for the grant or for the process. The approved and updated plan is required for every county, and it is required if and when there's FEMA hazard mitigation funds available, that you have to have a updated plan to apply for those.
Any questions for Jim?
Questions? Okay. I got a chance to talk to Jim yesterday and get some clarification on this. So the plan expired in 2012. Is this a state program, federal program that requires this being updated every 5 years, 10 years?
It's FEMA, the federal, that requires it to be updated every, I believe it's 7 years.
Okay, and we talked about, FEMA for the mitigation plan. That's separate from the National Flood Insurance Program as well. Those are done at local units of government, townships.
I do not want to misspeak to that, but I believe you are correct.
Okay. Okay,
But the things that'll have to be done in the plant use the information statistics from the National Floodplain.
okay. And how big of a process is this as far as time frame to complete a hazard mitigation plan using a consultant?
When we did it originally, it was a complete rewrite, so it shouldn't be that lengthy, but I think it was 2.5, 3 years to get it done.
2.5 to 3 years just
Yeah.
to get the plan?
Well, that was to get it done and get it submitted and get it approved,
Okay.
so.
Going through that process, a year, 2 years down the road, whatever the case is, then will these funds, this allow us to apply for funds to help in situations like Crooked Lake? Where we've got flooding and
Correct.
we have some big expenses coming up, and
Correct.
possibly Pine
Correct.
Lake with some of the things going on
Correct.
there?
So that'll all have to be looked at and addressed because those places weren't an issue when the plan was originally wrote in 2005 or 6, whatever it was approved, maybe 7. I think it was 5. So those areas will need to get into that plan now so that when we would apply for funds, they're on our radar, so to speak, and they're in our plan as a problem.
All right, so this consultant or whoever we choose to use, this is a countywide program, so we're gonna
Correct.
literally look at every
Yep.
potential
Yep.
situation in the
Yes.
county.
Yes.
Going forward. Did they ever give you any idea of what type of funds are available? Are we talking thousands
This
or hundreds
this
of
is
thousands?
sometimes the most secretive thing that I've ever dealt with, and I'll just say that. You have to dig for all the deadlines. I do know that in the past, that in some of the information I've gotten from them, there have been projects that have been millions of dollars that they've gotten funding for. But that might not necessarily be, might have been more dense populated area than what we have, you know what I'm saying? I'm sure that all plays into what funds are available, so.
Okay.
It's kind of like that they want to see what's your project and what will it take care of, and then they decide from there whether it's justifiable or not.
Assuming this is something that you'll work closely with the Drain
Yes.
Commissioner's office
Yes.
on as well to look at
Yep.
some of those areas as well.
Yep.
Because that'd be outstanding if we could find some help
Yeah,
or relief
but-
for,
Right, but this won't be a 12-month it's going to be a couple, 3 years down. Before we get to that point where we'd start the process of finding funding from FEMA to help those folks, so.
so this is not a short-term
No.
solution. This is definitely a
No,
long-term
no,
solution. Okay. Well, I appreciate your action on this. Thank you.
Did we get the notice of intent in?
Yes.
By April 5th?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
I worked with Heather and Michael, and we got that. Decided we need to get that in obviously to move forward. In my understanding, there is a deadline in middle of June for the initial grant application.
Yep.
After the state's involved with this too. My understanding is the state will review it and then send us a letter inviting us to apply for the grant.
Vivian?
So when you're answering some of David's questions, the funds, if we are permitted and are given a grant, the funds, the funds that we get for any help, it doesn't come to the county, doesn't it? Doesn't it go to the residents?
It goes to the project, paying for the project, and whatever governing bodies working on that project. It's very brick and mortar. So it would be some of the projects I've seen in the past is if they've reinforced dams, they've shored up where there was one I remember there was a waterway that come off some body water that was eroding all the properties around it. They actually redid that channel. This in the past has physically bought properties and then they just tear them down, get them out of the floodplain. Some other ones I know they've done is they've come in and physically either raised the houses or they move them back away from the water. It's those types of things.
Who has done those things? You say they picked up a house and moved it or raised it?
There was some of those done up on Jordan Lake years ago,
And
probably 15, 20 years ago, I think.
did the money come through the county or did it come?
That time, I believe it went through the township. It was their project,
Okay.
if I remember right.
One thing.
Commissioner Geiger?
This is a little off topic, but I think it's of importance to this county. We're having a recognition ceremony next week for employees celebrating significant milestones, and you're one of them. Unfortunately, you can't join us. So I just want to say publicly, for your 15 years here, Jim, the county is extremely grateful.
Thank you.
You've helped keep us safe and helped organize some significant responses. So
Thank you.
just wanted to say that. Thank you for your service.
Don, did you have anything?
Thank you.
Yeah, the 8750, does that come out of the general fund?
Yes, general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Jim? All right,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Did you say that that comes out of the general fund, or didn't you say that that in the past has been paid with in-kind and donations and?
Before, it was a combination of both.
Okay.
So worst case scenario is if it is the 35,000, then the county share would be 8750.
Okay, I misunderstood what you had answered earlier then.
Well, I think you understood it right. It still can be some in kind, right?
Right. I was just trying to give you, worst case,
Okay.
we would have to pay the 8750, but
Oh, I see.
we there's a really good chance we'll be able to, part of that will be in kind of things that footwork that myself and other agencies will do.
All right. Thank you for clearing
Yep,
that up.
sure.
Anything else? All right, there being no further discussion, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to apply for the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Program funds for the purpose of updating the Berry County Hazard Mitigation Plan that expired in 2012 and to issue an RFP for this project. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yarger.
Thank you.
Mr. Vandermark. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of Resolution 19-8 to accept the 2019 Berry County equalization values and approve the 2019 Berry County equalization values
That's hard to say, isn't
on
it?
State Form L4024.
So moved. Support.
Moved by Geiger, support by Jackson. The floor is yours, Mr. Vandermark.
Morning. This is the time of year we have to approve the values after the board review. I want to thank my staff for compiling all this information, and they made sure everything was within the state mandated 49 to 50% ratio of true cash value that we projected based on our equalization appraisals that we did last year. We were kind of surprised, actually. The board review was fairly light this year because the values did go up a decent amount. But for the most part, most of the local units did have some pretty slow amount of board review appeals. So that was good news. Overall, we were looking at this year, if you break it down by class, an increase of 1.60% in the agricultural class. Commercial class went up 1.31%. The industrial class went up 6.36%. So that was pretty good, pretty sizable increase. Residential went up 6.25%. Personal property was up 2.02%. So the total was an increase of 5.24%. And now we're at $3,044,549,549,005. Any questions about this report?
Could I ask you again what residential went up?
Residential went up roughly 6.25%.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Tim?
Any other questions? This is the county equalized value, which will become the state equalized value once the state approves it. And it needs to be moved to the full board, obviously.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before the board is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of Resolution 19-8 to accept the 2019 Berry County equalization values and approval of the 2019 Berry County equalization values on State Form L4024. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is approved. And I get you twice.
Yes,
Wow, we got a roll going
two
here.
in a row.
Yeah. And then there's David coming up. He's got 3. Alrighty. The question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners, or actually the board would entertain a motion, or the chair would entertain a motion. I'll get it right yet today.
Okay.
To recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to replace the part-time property records clerk position in the Equalization Department with a new full-time property appraiser position as described in the attached job description at grade 6 on the BCCA EA pay scale, and to promote Ingrid Pagno to the new position effective April 29th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Geiger, second by Connor.
I just want to let you know, on the job description, I did look at what Eaton County's used and some other counties as well. Just refined it a little bit, and I also used what Dave had and took out some of the GIS functions. But I did go into quite a bit more detail on it, just so it was very clear what the job entails. In the last year, the job has become a little bit more difficult due to the fact the state mandated a change in the cost company that we use to do our appraisals. Did present a lot of problems because the detail as far as that we use for different types of buildings was way more detailed than it was. Our assessor's manual that we used for our cost manual is now 300 pages long, so it's pretty complex. And the problem was a lot of the appraisals that we had errors, so we had to actually go through and fix a lot of those errors due to those changes. We use a program called the Apex program, which is like a drawing program, kind of like CAD/CAM. So that's quite a bit of training in that involved. We use BS&A to do our appraisals and the different building types. You have Class C, Class D, Class B, Class A, and so that's a lot of training involved. And then there's plus and minuses off those. You have to analyze land sales, and a lot of times there's not very many land sales, so it's a lot of analysis that's involved. Economic condition factors, if you're not familiar with that, basically that's where we take properties that sell, and we calculate a factor based on the average sale price and calculate that as a basis of our appraisals and apply that to properties that don't sell, which is the majority of them do not sell, and so that's the difficulty of being an appraiser in that position. And you also have to analyze sales. There's a lot of analysis of sales. You have to analyze, are the people, are they fans, are family, buying from another family? Do they know each other? Is there foreclosure involved? Is it a forced sale of any type? There's a lot of analysis of the sales that go into the position as well. I did mention to Michael that I did some research of what other counties are paying for this type of position, for the property appraiser position. Upon that analysis, I did note that the case or the property grade 6, in my opinion, seemed a little bit on the low side. I don't know if there's any leeway on that, but my recommendation was that the position requires a minimum of an MCAT, which is basically a trainee position where you're working under somebody else, so it requires supervision. But we do recommend that they get a MCAO license. My thought is once you receive that MCAO license, which is extremely difficult to get now through the state, is the pay grade could be increased to a pay grade of 7. I don't know if the committee would consider that, but that would be my recommendation, because I think it's important to make sure you pay fairly based get the best talent, basically. So that was my consideration. Now, to get into the MCAO program, you have to get approved by the state just to get in the program. And there's a limit to the amount of people they accept every year in the program, and it takes about 6 months of training to get the MCAO license, which is essentially level 2, essentially, just like a certified assessor that does a role.
Question. Thank you for your presentation. A lot of the issues that you talked about, the challenges of the position, are challenges currently facing your office.
Correct.
So, in summary, what's the pressure on your office that you need to increase this to full time?
Basically, we have to do equalization studies in all classes, and that is a mandated thing from the state. And we do have to make sure that we have proper staffing to do that. Basically, it requires we review 10% of all classes, unless we do a sales study, which typically the only area that we have enough sales to do a sales study is in residential, but we're still developing ECFs, so we're still looking at most of the sale. We're still appraising most of the sales in the county.
But you're doing that right now.
Correct.
So it's just a volume issue?
It's just a volume issue, yes.
It's a volume issue and...
Making sure the work is done properly. We also do get audited by the state on a yearly basis. Mm-hmm. So we have to make sure those audits come out properly, and to make sure our information is very well done on a quality basis.
Okay.
Also, we do have the new Assessment Reform Act that's passed just recently. I don't know if you're familiar with that. They are now requiring that if a local unit is non-compliant in their audits that they have done, that the county equalization department could possibly have to take over the local unit and take over the assessing function as well.
We don't want that to happen. The promotion of the individual. So is this just a new job title?
This is a new job title,
Okay.
basically.
All right. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Some of the burden that you're talking about is the fact with the next item that's on our agenda is the replacement for David's office of the GIS coordinator. Isn't that going to put a little bit more burden on your office with that position going more to IT?
Yes, it is somewhat. Our staff is actually going to be less than it was before, because before we had Rose in there and most of her time was doing equalization stuff, and then we had a clerical person, so it is going to put more pressure on my office because we're going to actually have less staffing in the office. But we'll see how that goes.
Something to think about.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions for Tim? So we had the honor of sitting in on a breakout session at the MAC conference, detailing all of the changes that are coming for equalization and having a county assessor designated.
Yeah.
Will this staff change help you in that process?
Yes, it'll allow us to have what they call a designated appraiser, potentially. And that's what it specifically talks about in the Assessment Reform Act.
So it'll just make you better prepared to handle that.
Make us better prepared. Also in the process, a little background too is we did know that possibly there was a chance of some staff changes, and so we were doing some cross-training with Ingrid in the past, because I felt it was important to make sure that I had a backup plan in place in case there were some necessary changes. So we have had her do a little bit of field work, and she's done some apex drawing before, and so I think that was a good thing to do some cross-training.
John, do you have anything? Okay. Seeing no further discussion, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to replace the part-time property records clerk position in the Equalization Department with a new full-time property appraiser position as described in the attached job description at grade 6 on the BCCEA pay scale, and to promote Ingrid Pagno to the new position effective April 29th, 2019. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, before the committee is, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to replace the GIS technician residential property appraiser position, grade 7, on the BCCEA pay scale, with a new IT help desk GIS technician position, grade 8, on the BCCEA, I'll get it right, pay scale, and as described in the attached job description.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Gibson, support by Geiger. The floor is yours, Mr. Chenevert.
Item 1 is, as you can see, the other half of what Tim was talking about. This is replace Rose Anger's position. It says new position under subject. That's not really quite correct. It's a new classification of an existing position.
Now we're going to bust you on that technicality then.
Do what you have to do. As he had mentioned, Rose had been drifting more toward equalization because they needed it. Her leaving gives us the opportunity to kind of recenter that, refocus on our mapping department and bringing files up to where they need to be. And also, since there will be a physical change in where that person sits, it will be over in the IT department, so that job we expect will also answer phones and take care of some help desk projects and such as they come up for IT. So it's kind of a hybrid position.
Anybody questions for Dave? Ben?
First question is, we're losing a wealth of experience with Rose leaving. How is this going to change your department and equalization, in your opinion?
Well, the biggest change is obviously institutional knowledge. We can't replace that. The second change has been already, we've noticed, and it's been 3 weeks already, walk-in customers who have questions about their property. It's now a little bit up in the air of who to send those people to. I mean, I can answer those questions and I can do mapping. I have a history of that, but I'm not always reliable in terms of where I'm going to be when I'm going to be there. So the phone calls are all getting directed to my phone, all that would have gotten directed to Rose, and obviously they're not getting probably answered as quickly as she would have. But we're getting them answered. So I don't know really how to answer your question. It's not going to be the same.
Yeah, we're still figuring it out.
We're still figuring it out. In this position, like I said, this is a new classification of this position. So this is part of figuring it out. A lot of it's going to have to do with the candidates that come forward and how they do. Hopefully, we'll be able to restore much of what we've done in the past, but it's going to take some time.
Right. Second question is, this is a position with some technical expertise needs. Do you foresee challenges recruiting qualified candidates to
Yes.
apply?
Yes.
How are you going about addressing those challenges?
Well, I haven't.
Oh, yeah, we haven't agreed.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, we will reach out to our usual sources of information, community colleges. Our last employee who's working out extremely well, came from KCC. Those are always good sources. LCC is another good source. So we'll see what happens. Typically, it's not unusual for a GIS mapping department to be within IT countywide across the state. It's a pretty common practice. People who are in geographic information systems and mapping technically are generally technically oriented anyway. So we'll see what we come up with.
I have no other questions.
All righty. Seeing no discussion, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to replace the GIS technician residential property appraiser position, grade 7 on the BCCEA pay scale, with a new IT help desk GIS technician position, grade 8 on the BCCEA pay scale, as described in the attached job description. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is approved. Number 2, David.
Number 2 is.
Wait, can I get a motion first? At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the attached renewal agreement between the Berry County MEI to locate an antenna on the existing radio tower at the Sheriff's Department.
I would so move that.
Support.
Motion made by Connor, support by Gibson. David, it's yours.
Again, this is a renewal. I think this is our 3rd renewal of this agreement. A little tardy on this one. It's, I think it was originally a 5-year agreement, and it's been over 5 years. The payment, if you will, on the last agreement was that they gave us bandwidth, internet bandwidth, as payment for the lease. What we don't require that bandwidth anymore. MEI is actually our principal internet bandwidth provider, so we mutually negotiated a monthly cost, and so instead of giving us 10 megs of bandwidth, it's we work at $200 a month is the rent agreement for the tower and the space in the Sheriff's Department. Another change is the shortening of the termination language. I think it was at 2 years, and because of possible changes down at the jail, we reduced that down to a year. Those are the 2 major changes, was the compensation and the termination, shortening the termination. It's a 3-year agreement, but there is a 1-year termination allowed.
Any questions for David? All right.
I guess I do have a question. Is that a compensation? Is that an average compensation for that? How did you determine that? $200 a month.
They're paying, I don't know, for somebody who's on the airport committee, they're paying for a tower out there, somewhere very near that, in that ballpark. And then I talked, well, it's been a while, but I did talk to the city a while back on what they charge for the antennas on their towers, on their water towers, and it's in that ballpark.
Oh, okay.
Anything else? Seeing no further discussion, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the attached renewal agreement between Berry County and the MEI to locate an antenna on the existing radio tower at the Sheriff's Department. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The item is approved. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to reassign a 2010 Ford Edge VIN number 2FMDK3 G0ABB17327, formerly with the friend of the court, to the Planning and Zoning Department to sell via sealed bid to the highest bidder, the 2008 Dodge Charger, VIN number 2B3K A43678H114950, and to sell for scrap the 2001 Chevy Astro, VIN number 1GNEL19W01B118458.
So moved.
Support.
Been moved by Parker, support by Gibson. The floor is yours.
I don't know what more I can say.
Van,
Want those VIN numbers again?
van has finally outlived its useful life. The blue van?
That's what I'm told. I tried to, I don't know how I get myself into these things, but I did try to jump it myself and was unsuccessful. I talked to the county mechanic at the sheriff's department, and yeah, his advice was to scrap it as well. I guess it's got, and Ken can speak to this, he actually drove it when it was drivable. It's got brake and transmission issues, and it's basically rusting through the floorboards.
Ooh, that's not fun.
So if we sell it, if we sell it to a bidder, I assume we're gonna be selling it to a bidder for scrap, so why not just scrap it ourselves is kind of my thought. The tires look decent, but I don't.
But it is a 2001 Chevy Astro.
Yeah.
On the Ford Edge, that's the gray Edge?
I think it is.
All right.
Yeah.
And so we won't need to, I'm assuming that going forward, we're just putting the Berry County seal and Berry County word mark on the vehicle, so we don't have to pay for it to be recited or relettered?
Well, it'd be up to planning and zoning, but, oh, you mean take it off the one and put it on the other?
Yeah. It says Berry County on it, right?
The Ford Edge?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I don't know if they could take it off the Charger and put it on the Edge, possibly. I don't know how that works, but.
Yeah. I don't have any other questions.
Anything else for David? All right, the question before the committee has been to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to reassign the 2010 Ford Edge VIN number 2FMDK3G0ABB17327, formerly with the friend of the court, to the Planning and Zoning Department. To sell via sealed bid to the highest bidder, the 2008 Dodge Charger VIN number 2B3KA43678H1194950, and to sell for scrap the 2001 Chevy Astro VIN number 1GNEL19W01B118458. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is approved. Thank you, sir. All right. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to allow the use of excess funds from the $25,000 approved in the 2019 capital budget for heating and air conditioning for the animal shelter barn, training barn, to complete the construction of the interior of the training barn.
Support.
Second.
Support by Gibson, second by Parker. Mr. Kirsch, the floor is yours.
Good morning. So on this, when I estimated the cost for putting the heat and air conditioning in the barn, obviously, I'm pretty happy that it came in almost $15,000 less. And what I'd like to use is, these are, of course, are funds from the donation from the Shelter Donation Fund. And to be able to drywall, put new doors on, ceiling, and actually bring to completion wiring, put a mechanical room in that training barn we use it for holding classes, for training, rehabbing the animals that come in. It's a place where right now the volunteers are going in there during inclement weather, especially all winter long. It's also, we're going to use it for our special events. The fundraisers that we have, the empty the shelter days, that type of thing. We're currently using the lobby. And this has kind of been a project I've been working on ever since I got here, was to clean out that big barn and actually put it to good use where we can, the biggest thing though is mostly for rehabbing the animals and a place for the volunteers for us to go to do that work, which we don't have a spot right now.
Questions for Ken?
What, the training space, is there specific needs for your training space that another conference room might not have?
Sure, it's on location.
Mm-hmm.
It's easily sanitizable. When you're bringing in shelter animals into like the Titan Center and the carpeted area, that type of thing. That's not a real popular idea. It's,
Tim,
it's-
you can shake your head no.
we could also get a carpet cleaner while we're, if we want to, but yeah, so it's right there. And then also, I'm working on some grants for when someone adopts an animal from us. It's always been my goal when I took over this position. When someone adopts an animal from us, they get 2 free training classes to help that transition and help that adoption stay permanent. You know, we still have a small percentage of our animals that would get adopted that come back because the placement didn't go properly. And I think if we had a place to spend some time and train with them, I think we could even be more successful than we already are.
Great, thank you.
Who are you nodding to?
Vivian.
Me? Okay, thank you. Just recently had an individual in my neighborhood that had to return a dog, and I'm happy to hear that we're not only training the employees, but we're rehabbing the dogs, and I'm very, very excited to hear that you're going to be offering classes to new parents of animals that, because it's needed.
Yeah,
So, and for everybody involved, so,
I appreciate that.
yeah, I'm happy to hear that.
Thank you.
And I don't know if it's, has it been a year and a half yet that you've been with us?
20 months and I'm behind schedule on this, so
20
yeah.
months, okay,
yeah.
well, if you saw the training barn, the
Yeah.
now training barn where it started, it was
Yeah.
full of critters and
Things.
stuff. So, you know, it's been quite a renovation project to get it where it's at, and I support this. It'll be a great asset for our community to have that space available. And it's needed space too, because we're just kind of in a tight corner back there. So
We
we
are.
don't have we gotta make do with what we have, and that's a great use of that space. So I appreciate your ingenuity going forward, thinking that through, so.
Thank you.
Dan, John?
A trained dog is a good dog, and
I
it's
agree.
gonna be a good relationship between the owners that way too. So I really appreciate what you're doing, and get that thing fixed up as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
I personally think the donation fund is excellent for this. This is definitely in the benefit of the animals. Thank you.
So the training building, will it accommodate groups for training?
Sure. So we actually have a classroom in there right now. I've got I've got tables and 35 chairs, and we have a TV, all through donations, and people have donated and stuff. The issue, of course, is we're in there this winter, and I've got space heaters, and it's a barn.
I get that.
Yeah. So, it's a very, very good sized building, and we'll be able to. It's going to have a lot of multi-purpose. So.
Well, any other questions for Ken? Seeing none, the question before the committee is recommend to the full Board of Commissioners approval to increase the 2019 capital budget amount to install air conditioning in the animal shelter kennels. Oh, that's the wrong one.
Next.
That's the next one. I flipped my page too quick. Let's go back. The question before the committee is to recommend the Board of Commissioners approval to allow the use of the excess funds from the $25,000 approved for the 2019 capital budget for heating and air conditioning for the animal shelter barn to complete the construction of the interior of the training barn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The item is approved.
Thank you.
At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to increase the 2019 capital budget amount to install air conditioning in the animal shelter kennels from $20,000 to $39,877 to include replacement of the heating unit with funds to be paid from the animal shelter donation fund.
So moved.
Moved by Geiger, support by Gibson. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So in my years and years of HVAC experience, which is nothing, when I asked for the original amount of money to put air conditioning on the back of the actual the kennels area itself, I wasn't aware that I had to replace the heating. It's been there for 19 years, and it's definitely at the end of its lifetime. It's served us really well. And it's it's kept the animals really warm, and we have a nice air circulation system with it. But we just can't, we had several bidders that came out and bid on the job. I mean, we just can't utilize that heating system that's there now to be able to add air conditioning onto it. And that was my original ask, was just to add air conditioning to the current system. and which we don't have the ability to do, so we have to replace both of those systems. So that's the difference in the funds, and again, it would come out of the shelter donation funds.
Any questions?
Did you end up with a local contractor?
No.
No, we
We
didn't have
tried,
any
yeah.
local contractors bid. Okay.
Wouldn't the heating be replaced under the building maintenance fund and then the air conditioning under the donation fund? Because the air conditioning would be added, but heating was already there, and it was 19 years old. It was coming towards near the end of life, I would think.
Want me to address that for just a moment? Ken and I talked a little bit about that, and John, you're correct. If, had this project not come together and the heating just naturally had to be replaced, we would, we've planned for that in the building rehabilitation fund. So you certainly could choose to utilize the building rehabilitation fund for that. We also discussed, Ken and I, that as you add air and make the upgrades, there is funding available in the animal shelter donation fund for that. So I think both funds are completely acceptable to use. It is just a, I guess arguably a choice that the board, it's up to you if you want to split. Do the air out of the donation fund and the heat out of the building rehabilitation.
I guess did the Animal Advisory Board talk about this?
We have not talked about it, other than Kent updated us on the fact that they were gonna make the presentation. Or they were gonna talk about that, and that the cost estimate was significantly higher based on the fact that you couldn't use the current system. So it all has to be redone throughout, and it's needed. Definitely needed in there. Part of the ongoing process. We're talking about repainting, and doing some other stuff
Yes.
in there as well.
Sure, so these are 2 of the 5 projects that were major projects we're doing this year, and we have to do these 2 before we can go on to the putting water in, that was approved in the back of the facility, building, covering out the back end of the building, and then, of course, the final thing we'll be doing is we're repainting the entire facility
Then,
inside.
Other things you're doing, is that coming out of the donation fund also?
Yeah, those were things that already got approved last year. There was 5 of these that, and I'm doing them in order as we're doing them in order as the construction's coming. So. yeah,
But they're
we're
coming
just-
out of the donation fund also?
Yes. We still, and as of, if this was approved, we would have $208,619 in the donation fund. If
Left.
this was approved, left.
That's probably more than what's in the building rehab fund.
Well, they had about closer to 300,000 in there, but I still say that the heating should be paid for out of building maintenance. I understand the air conditioning should come out of donation funds, because that's an add-on, but
I have no problem one way or the other.
Yep.
I agree, I don't care one way.
I would support John's amendment to put the heating out of the building maintenance fund and the air out of the
donation fund.
animal donation fund, the animal shelter donation fund.
Why not both? Out of building maintenance?
I think that the air conditioning is a needed asset, but it is an asset that we could get along without. So I think that's what the donation fund's for. But the heating is old enough, I think it should be replaced under building maintenance. Just my thoughts.
What would those totals be then?
Not tell you that.
Do you have a breakout of the heating replacement versus in
We
the
do,
air?
I don't know if I have it with me, hopefully Kim does.
I have no position one way or another. It's just, I think if you move heating over into building maintenance, you should move AC over. Because if it's hot, I mean, you're not going to have training in a sweltering barn.
We have those
Now, this
numbers,
is in the
just don't
kennel,
have-
isn't it?
Oh, it's in the kennel?
I think. Ken, am I right on that?
Kennel.
The kennel, right?
Oh, just for the kennel,
Yeah,
okay.
just for the kennels, the building is, yeah.
We already
I'm
did
looking for the
others.
numbers here, just a second.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
if it's It's all right, we can update when we take it to the board. We know that the
Okay.
total, I think, is 39. We'll prepare a
Okay,
motion.
that's fine.
Okay,
I just
that'll be
wondered.
fine.
Okay, that's-
So there is an amendment on the floor. So the amendment was to have the funds for the heating units to come out of building rehab, and the air conditioning to come out of the donation fund. That motion was made by Smelker, supported by Jackson. All those in favor, please, or is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so it is amended. Any further discussion on the proposal or on the item before the committee? All right, seeing none, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to increase, well, how are we going to do that one? Approval to increase the 2019 capital budget amount to install air conditioning in the animal shelter kennels from $20,000 to $39,877 to include replacement of the heating unit, with funds to be paid from the animal shelter donation fund and the capital improvement budget. All those in favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you for the support, I really appreciate it. Yep.
All righty, last on my desk, Mr. Brown. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the attached Municipal Employees Retirement System, MERS, application for additional service credit purchase requested by Julie Jones to allow her to purchase 7 months of generic service with MERS.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Geiger, support by Jackson. Michael, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you. You have the information and materials in front of you. This is similar to one that we recently discussed and the board ultimately approved for Deputy Robert Horman. This is for a deputy at the Sheriff's Department, Julie Jones. Julie is requesting 7 months of generic service to be purchased at her cost in the amount of $13,649. In your packet, the second page, you have the application for additional service credit purchase, which identifies some of the information. Deputy Jones has the age, so the benefit that she falls under is a 50-25, so age 50 with 25 years of service. She could, she has the age requirement met, but does not have the 25 years of service. She is 7 months short. Julie isn't here. The sheriff, as you indicated, had an unforeseen commitment, or he would have been here. Both support this, and Julie is making the request as she has a parent that's ailing and in need of assistance. She was finding herself in a predicament that traveling back and forth to the east side of the state and on medical leave and some other things to care for that parent. She has been able to find a stopgap measure that she believes, she hopes will get her the 7 months and potentially beyond, allow her to work that, but she doesn't know. So she would still like to purchase this, if you may, as a safety measure in case things should change and she finds herself having to retire before she meets the 25 years via the work. Now, there is a caveat to this. Her service with us, if you look in about the middle, you'll see under service credit. Her earned service as of the time of the calculation was 20 years and 7 months. So she has 20 years and 7 months of actual service working for Berry County. She was able to, under Act 88, which is the Reciprocal Retirement Act that allows years worked for another and a municipality, whether it be MERS or a municipality that participates in Act 88. And I believe it's the state of Michigan in this case, that she carries or brings in an additional 3 years and 10 months of service. She did not work for us. It only goes for vesting purposes, but it will not, those 3 years and 10 months will not go into the calculation of her actual benefit. Only the time that she has worked for us, i.e. the 20 years and 7 months, and any subsequent time she works that adds to that, and the 7 months that she's purchasing go toward her calculation. Of course, the 20 years and 7 months we've paid into and will continue to pay into on her behalf, as will she with any employee contribution for those months' work. And then the 7 months that she's asking to purchase have been calculated at $13,649. Yes. Oops.
Questions?
John did.
I guess I'm probably not reading this right, but on page 1 there, after the agenda item, it says before proposed purchase, the annual benefit is 33, and then after the proposed purchase, annual benefit is 32. Is that correct? It goes down after the purchase?
So, and Deputy Horman's was the same way, and it plays out
quicker.
of 1 of 19.5. It does, and let me see if I can answer correctly.
She's not doing this for the monetary benefit. She's doing this for the time change.
Yeah, it would require it before the proposed purchase. Her earliest eligible retirement date isn't until 12/1 of 2019. She'd have to work. If she purchases this, she could retire 5/1 of 2019. So
Okay.
yes, it does. It becomes a shorter.
Okay, just understand it better now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Michael?
I just have a question. When we looked at Mr. Horman's, or Deputy Horman's, we talked about the benefit issue. Is this going to be, will she be eligible for all her benefits as far as medical, all of that? Because she's retiring early?
Luella, make sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but no, she will not in this case. Wait a minute.
Yes.
Pardon me. If she works until her eligible retirement date, i.e. works for us, she will be eligible. We just settled a grievance with regard to Deputy Horman that grandfathered Deputy Horman, but any future situations where the retiree meets their retirement because of purchased service credit, that does not make them eligible. Did I say that correctly? Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Good, great question. And I had to think about that for just a minute because it's so fresh, but we corrected that.
All right, that's been reworked in the contract then, or in the?
It is it's a settled, it is a separate standalone settlement, but it is a part and parcel of the bargaining agreement.
And Julie knows this.
And Julie's aware of this. Yep.
Any other questions? there being no further discussion, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the attached Municipal Employees Retirement System MERS application for additional service credit purchase requested by Julie Jones to allow her to purchase 7 months of generic service with MERS. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The item is approved. At this time, any member of the public wishing to address the committee may do so for up to 3 minutes. For limited public comment. I'm just trying. Good job.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's still morning. Sharon Zabrowski, Carlton Township. If you watch Channel 13, they do a segment called One Good Thing, which is one good thing that makes it great to live in Western Michigan. I'm going to give you one good thing that makes it great to live in Berry County. The libraries in Berry County have gone together to offer a special program called One County, One Book. The idea is that everybody reads The Shadows We Hide by Alan Eskins. This is a story of a man who has never met the father he was named after. He stumbles across a newspaper story of a man with the same name as his who was murdered in a small town. Curious, he makes a trip to the small town to see what he can find out. And so it begins. There is love, murder, a large inheritance, a new family member, and a desperate town. After reading this, you are invited to Lesson Sharp Hall on May 9th at 7 p.m. to hear the author talk about the book and to do a book signing. Usually you find these types of programs offered where there are extremely large libraries. This has been done in the Tampa area for several years, or Grand Rapids, or very populated counties. So this is wonderful that this cultural addition to our county has been added. I will leave some flyers over here on the table. Thank you.
You changed your hair color and just talked about murder. Are you on the lam?
I didn't think you'd recognize me.
Thank you, Sharon.
I'll change it now.
Benjamin.
Any other public comments? All righty. Is there any other business to come before this committee?
You want to tell them where the next meeting's at?
I am going to. So just a reminder that the April 23rd meeting will be held at the Tyden Center at 9 a.m. It will be one of our employee recognition events, so we get a little extra space in there. There being no further business and without objection, the committee will now adjourn.
Gotta go make the bike.